Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I have heard the same story about Jocelyn Nungray, and it is tragic, and it's something that should have never happened. I do want folks on this floor to know that the contents of this JR would have done nothing to preclude that tragedy from happening, because the facts of that are not the facts of what are contained in the JR. So I do want to set that aside. Her story is tragic, and it is one that, when I came here before you on a different constitutional amendment, it was more in line with the story of Jocelyn. So I do want to be clear that the facts of that case are not implicated by this joint resolution. So I think we do need to set that aside. SJR 87 was filed just days ago at the end of session and rocketed over to the House. I think it is a terrible and a dangerous policy. And I strongly encourage everyone here to do one of three things: vote against it, hit the white light, or just sit back in your chair and don't vote at all. I want to emphasize how vastly different it is than SJR 5, which so many of us voted for. That resolution, which many of us worked hundreds of hours to reach consensus on this session, had strong due process and put the burden on the state. It also considered the facts and circumstances of the new allegation, as we always do. This proposal is night and day to that. SJR 87 is automatic. No real process, no due process, no consideration of the independent facts of the case. You have a prior conviction and someone accuses you of something new, straight to jail. Not only have you not been convicted of the new accusation, but nothing even has to be considered in terms of your dangerousness or your flight risk. We don't do that anywhere, ever, for any other kind of bail setting. We never have, and we shouldn't do it now. All that's required here is probable cause, which is an extremely low standard. In Texas, we have something that's called the one-witness rule. If a single person's statement establishes the elements of the offense, that's enough. And at trial, that means that one witness has to be believed beyond a reasonable doubt after questioning and cross-examination. But at a bail setting, that person isn't questioned or examined. As long as the hearsay a judge gets isn't obviously false on its face, that equals probable cause. So under this resolution, it doesn't matter what the facts are. If you have a certain history, then someone accusing you gets you locked up awaiting trial automatically, maybe for years. Members, that's wrong and it's immoral, and we should reject it without a second thought. And I'll tell you this too about moving the goalposts on bail. We passed strong bail reform on the high end already, and now they suddenly want this. And there are multiple Senate bills on bail and these related issues that have already passed both chambers. 7, 8, 9, I can't keep count. And they will become law or be put before the voters of this state. Do you know how many criminal justice reforms the Senate has passed after receiving them from the House? Zero. Not one. Most, including those from Republican chairmen in this chamber that had a supermajority of votes here, haven't even been referred across the way. Haven't even been referred. So this just isn't about the bad policy contained in SJR 87. This is about the dignity of this chamber. And I see Mr. Dutton standing at the back mic. Mr. Dutton, this is an expect us moment. And as I said before, vote no, hit the white light, or just don't vote at all. You have done an enormously challenging job when it came to balancing the rights and responsibilities and dealing with public safety on bail. This resolution goes impermissibly too far and does something we've never done in our law before, and we must reject it.
Mr. Dutton, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield for a question?
Gentleman yield for questions?
Yes.
He yields
Thank
for
you.
questions.
Now, one of the things that I have experienced is that when somehow or another they come to take away our freedoms, they first scare us to death. And then that makes it easy because then you sort of accept the fact that this is the consequence. But as you pointed out, the problem that they tried to scare us with, this bill wouldn't have fixed it.
No,
Is
sir.
that right?
That's correct.
Well, I guess I'm a little torn because I know there are a number of fixes to our judicial system that went out of this House to the Senate. Are you aware of that?
Yes, sir, I am.
Have any of them been considered at all by the Senate?
In terms of criminal justice reform measures?
Yes,
Last I checked, no.
not one.
No, sir.
Last time I checked, not one. And in fact, is it your understanding that many of them didn't even get referred to a committee?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Well, if there's any time that we should say no to the Senate, simply because the process is broken between the House and the Senate, would you say it's this time?
Yes, sir. This is exactly that time. This is a policy that was pushed through in the waning days of session after we had had an enormous conversation on bail, one in which we all spent an enormous amount of time on, and I think we got right and we struck the balance. And when you take this JR in conjunction with JR 5, so let's think about that. Someone under JR 5, that becomes law, and a judge is granted bail to them, that means a judge has found that they're not a flight risk and they're not a future danger. And so just merely being accused of something again, it is going to be an automatic denial of bail. The only reason they would be out on bail is because we have said the judge must make a finding that they're not a flight risk and that they're not a danger.
And that's a part of the freedom that we all enjoy, isn't it?
Look, this comes down, and I know this gets a little bit philosophical here, but we have never done this. We have never turned this on its head to an automatic denial of bail. Nowhere in our jurisprudence have we done this on a mere accusation. The default setting, and I get it, some of these situations are tragic and they are difficult to deal with, but the default setting in our system, and we talk a lot about the Bill of Rights in this chamber, the default setting in this system is liberty.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one final concern, and that is that if we pass this measure, we all have to give up a part of our freedom. Because what this bill presupposes is that you don't have to be charged with a crime, not convicted of a crime in any way, but just be charged with a crime.
We're talking about a mere accusation upon probable cause,
Right.
which is the lowest standard possible for an automatic denial of bail,
Yes.
likely for multiple years. That is light years from anything we've ever considered in this body before.
And one of the comments from the author of the bill, he made an allegation about judges having released some of these people. But is it your understanding that the judges simply followed the law that existed at the time?
I'd have to look at every case specifically. I do know that there were a handful of cases under our prior law, and that's what SJR 5 was aimed at addressing, was
Right.
to get, well, not just SJR 5, but go through the litany of things that we've talked about, putting magistration requirements, creating new guardrails for the granting of bail, that we did on this floor just within the last couple of weeks. So this is not happening in
Gentleman's time has
isolation.
expired.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.